Okay, back, and I just finished Lonesome Dove. Lonesome Dove by Larry McMurtry. Hold on. I'm bringing up my Kindle. Larry McMurtry. I was right. All right. So finished it, and I've been sitting here for probably 10 minutes, walking around, going to the bathroom, trying to wrap my head around what I thought of the experience. But then I thought while I was sitting here, what is the purpose of these reviews, and it's to get a better idea, and usually I can't, sometimes I can't get the right idea of what I think unless I write it down or speak. And so that's what this is. So what do I think of Lonesome Dove? I came in with very high hopes. I saw the miniseries from the 90s, early 90s, I think it was, a long time ago. And I loved it. I absolutely loved it. And then a few weeks ago, I saw a review by Mike's Book Reviews, and he thought it was amazing, the best book ever. And so I said, I'm currently exploring out of my comfort zone of sci-fi fantasy, and I love the miniseries, so I'll give this a try. And so I did, and it's been an absolutely captivating read. Absolutely. I It is a very large book, very large, but those don't scare me. I really enjoy them actually, and I enjoyed this so much because it gave me so much to read, so much to enjoy, and there was just more of it. And it was the experience of the cowboys going from South Texas on the Mexican border on the Brazos and going all the way up to the Canadian border up in Montana and everything along the way. And then at the end, Woodrow Call going back south, back down and ending where he started in Lonesome Dove. And that experience going up and down, even though the down was a lot quicker, but the up was the what mattered a lot. That was such an experience, such a great experience. And the characters were, especially Gus. He was most obviously like the main heart of the and the main I don't know protagonist, but he was just the guy to root for. Definitely interesting, kind-hearted, all of it in a world of the West where it was most man we saw was like a woman beater of some kind. He wasn't, and the boys in the Hat Creek, what is it called? I forget, but cattle company, Hat Creek Cattle Company. Uh, they all had their own. They were all unique and all interesting, and they were an island amongst themselves going up through this harsh world, um, and it was great, and how do I even explain it? I remember loving the Dark Tower, and some of my favorite parts were when Roland would think back, would be very skillful, like a very skillful ranger, and he would think back to his days roaming with his and fighting with his old group of boys, and that comes, it looks like, straight from something like Lonesome Dove, where you had Call, you had uh, Augustus, Gus, you had Dietz, you had was it Pi, you had those four who were, and Jake for a bit, who were members of that old group, and they all started dying. You were there for them dying one by one, and some of them you looked forward to. Jake, his time had come, and others were just so sad. Dietz, Gus, obviously. Pi made it. He survived. The least likely to. He survived. He's with Newt up north. But yeah, the whole book was like that. Was like the best parts, I think, in a lot of ways. The most riveting parts of Roland's time. it was like this whole book. Sprinkle in like a whole bunch of other characters with Lorena and Claire towards the end there a lot. With Newt again, with the various cooks you have, and all these weird characters who are also interesting, and it's close to home as well because being from Texas and leaving it made me leaving it years ago. It made me nostalgic in a sense, and to understand, to have some understanding with some of the boys in here, and to be transported with them and feel like I was on the trip with them, and I felt like it felt right. Again, I'm just trying to get my words to make sense to me, right? To get a better understanding of this book, and it was it's one of the only books I've read that is like comforting. It is just so comforting. Like when I was reading and am and always reading like a sci-fi, like like a Red Rising, or even like to a lesser extent like a Sun Eater, or when I was reading Wheel of Time, to a much lesser extent. But you always felt pushed. You always felt a forward momentum. Whether it was the Red Rising, where it's battle and sword fighting scenes and everything has momentum, and Sun Eater has as well, and you're dealing with not only that but also with these God versus the devil and highfalutin things going on. I'm saying falutin. You can tell I've read a western, right? But there was that, but there was no comfort in it. I didn't feel any comfort whatsoever. It was Lonesome Dove was slow, the slow prairie life, but things happened, and even those things were crazy exciting. But it felt natural, or it was when things happened, it was quick, very quick. But the times in between you were there for, the days when they're just riding and keeping the cows all going straight, and Gus is just talking to Lorena, or arguing with the boys, or Newt's learning how to rope, or ride, or anything, right? Dietz goes and looks for water, right? And the thing is trying to find water to get to further north so they can continue going up to Montana. Like all of that was absolutely, like, there was no slowing down. Like no part of this I felt bored. None of it. It was all cozy, nice, and exciting when it had to be, right? There was no time where there was no time when I'm looking for a fight, because anytime there's a fight, I'm worried, because people, you get scratched, you're gonna die in this world. If you get cut, if you break a limb, if anything, right? And it happens all the time. There was no lead up to a lot of it as well, you know, and you go from peaceful 1 second to running for your life the next second, and that's ended up with getting Gus. It gets Gus at the end. Um, but I would find myself at work when I had spare time, or even here when I was trying to watch Twin Peaks, or play a game, or something, and I kept thinking, I'd rather be on the trail. I'd rather be on the trail. I'd want to be in this cozy place, get some coffee, and sit back and read about the Hat Creek Cattle Company going north. You know, it was just an experience, and I know there's other books that are in the series, right? There's like three more books, two prequels and one sequel. But I don't know if I want it. I don't know if I want it. I'll have to maybe look because there's a spell magic involved in the brief mentions of the past, right? And Lord knows I want to like read more with Gus in it, but there is magic to this isolated story, where it starts, where it ends, and the old men are old, the rangers are legends and past their time. and they're just moving north. And the new folk, like, it's great that they started the cattle company up north and up in Montana, and it's great that that happened. And it's a they set out to do what they wanted, right? And they're getting their legs underneath them, and they're going, I don't know if I want to read about the time in Montana. I feel like the time is done, but maybe in a little bit I want to come back to it. But right now I am supremely satisfied with what the story has brought and where the story concluded. Yeah, where the story concluded, and yeah, just the coziest book I think I've read in a long while. I'll give that book like a 9.4, I think. 9.4. It feels right. A lot of times I give the scores and I want to, and when I land on what feels right, I know it's right. And I think 9.4 is there. And what takes that point 0.6 away? What makes it so it's not a 10? Yes, they're great characters, and I loved reading about them, and their stories were raw and real. But I wouldn't say inspired. I wouldn't say I'm like inspired by any character to the extent that I have been before. I rank it against, let's say, Lord of the Rings, which I think is as close to perfect as you can get, the books. And yes, there are great lines and great quotes, and I have many quotes highlighted in Lonesome Dove, but the words and how they're used and the story itself in Lord of the Rings are just a little bit better, just a little bit up there. And I have to really give that a think, but I can only bring Lonesome Dove down a bit, or try and, I guess, what is it? What is the word? I forget the word. To prove? No, that's not the right word. There is one, and I think it starts with the C. But to justify, maybe to justify the 9.4 is to look at something higher, and there's not much that springs to mind right now other than Lord of the Rings, but it feels right being 9.4. I'll have to think about more on that in the future, but it's a great book, one that I very well might read again, and probably will read again just because of how wonderful it is. But that's the review, and on to the next book.